The piano sat in the corner of the saloon like a coffin no one had the courage to bury. Dust covered its black lid thick as velvet. The keys were yellowed, some chipped at the edges. A water stain bloomed across the wood where the roof had leaked years back, and no one had bothered to wipe it clean. The stool was still there, pushed in close, as if someone had just stood up and walked away. No one had touched it in 10 years, not since the night Sarah Calloway played her last song. The Broken Spoke saloon still stood on the edge of town, leaning slightly to the left, like an old man favoring a bad knee. It wasn't much warped floorboards, a bar that smelled of whiskey and regret, and a back room where card games ended in drawn guns more often than handshakes. But it was the only place in Red Bluff where a man could drink in peace, and that was enough. Owen Mercer pushed through the batwing doors just after sundown, the kind of quiet hour when the light turned everything gold and forgiving. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and deliberate in his movements, the kind who didn't speak unless he had something worth saying. His hat was pulled low, his coat dusty from the trail. He'd been riding for 3 days straight, and his bones ached in places he'd forgotten existed. Behind the bar, Tom Riddle looked up from wiping down a glass. He was older now, greyer, his hands slower than they used to be, but his eyes were still sharp. "Owen," Tom said, nodding once. "Tom." Owen crossed to the bar and set his gloves down. "Whiskey," Tom poured without a word. The amber liquid caught the last of the daylight coming through the window. Owen drank it slow, letting the burn settle in his chest. "Didn't think you'd come back," Tom said quietly. "Didn't plan to." "Then what changed?" Owen didn't answer right away. He turned the glass in his hand, watching the way the light moved through it. "Got a letter?" he said finally. "From the county. Said the property's going up for auction. Thought I'd see it one more time before it's gone." Tom's face tightened, but he didn't argue. He just nodded and poured another drink. That's when the sound came. A single note, clear, deliberate, unmistakable. It drifted from the corner of the room like smoke, soft and haunting. Owen's hand froze halfway to his glass. Tom's cloth stopped mid-wipe. Another note followed. Then another. The melody was slow, achingly familiar. It was the kind of song that didn't need words, just the weight of memory pressing down on every chord. Owen turned. The piano sat in the shadows, untouched. The stool was empty. The lid was still closed. But the music didn't stop. Tom's face had gone pale. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. Owen stood slowly, his heart hammering in his chest. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, his boots heavy on the floorboards. The music grew louder as he approached, filling the space between the walls like a living thing. He reached the piano and stopped. The keys were moving, not all of them, just a few, pressing down one at a time, as if touched by invisible fingers. The melody continued, soft and sorrowful, each note hanging in the air before the next one came. Owen's throat tightened. He knew the song. Mama's song. That's what Sarah used to call it. She'd play it every night before closing, back when the saloon was full of laughter and the smell of her perfume still clung to the air. She'd sit at that piano with her back straight and her hands moving like water, and the whole room would go quiet just to listen. And then one night, she didn't come back. Owen reached out and touched the edge of the piano. The wood was cold beneath his palm. The music stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. Behind him, Tom was breathing hard. "That's not possible," he said, his voice shaking. "That piano hasn't been played in—" "I know." "Then how—" "I don't know." Owen stepped back, his hand still trembling. He looked at the stool, the keys, the dust that hadn't been disturbed. Everything was exactly as it had been, except for the music. A small voice broke the silence. "It plays Mama's song." Owen spun around. A child stood in the doorway. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her dress was faded and patched at the knees, her dark hair tangled and falling into her face. Her feet were bare, dusty from the road. She was staring at the piano with wide, unblinking eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Tom demanded. The girl didn't look at him. She took a step forward, her gaze locked on the piano. "It plays Mama's song," she said again, quieter this time. "Every night when the sun goes down." Owen's blood ran cold. "What did you say?" The girl finally looked at him. Her eyes were dark, too old for her face. "She told me you'd come back," she said. "She said you'd hear it too." Owen's voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. "Who told you that?" The girl pointed at the piano. "Mama." Owen didn't move. He stood frozen in the center of the saloon, staring at the child like she'd stepped out of a fever dream. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what she'd said, but the words wouldn't settle. Tom came around the bar slowly, his face hard. "Girl, who brought you here?" She didn't answer. She just kept looking at the piano. "Answer me," Tom said, sharper now. "Where's your folks?" "Don't have any," the girl said softly. "Just Mama." "And where's your mama?" The girl tilted her head, confused. "Here," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "She's always here." Tom's jaw tightened. He glanced at Owen, but Owen wasn't looking at him. He was looking at the girl, really looking at her. The shape of her face, the curve of her mouth, the way she stood with her shoulders back, like she was bracing for something. He'd seen that posture before. "What's your name?" Owen asked, his voice low. The girl hesitated, then quietly, "Lily." Owen's chest tightened. He took a slow breath and crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Lily," he repeated. "How old are you?" 7. "And you said your mama told you I'd come back?" She nodded. "When did she tell you that?" Lily looked down at her hands. "Every night," she whispered. "When the piano plays." Owen's throat closed. He forced himself to keep his voice steady. "Lily, your mama, what's her name?" The girl looked up at him, and for the first time, her eyes filled with something close to fear. "Sarah," she said. The name hit Owen like a fist to the gut. He stood abruptly, turning away, his hand going to his mouth. Behind him, Tom swore under his breath. "That's not possible," Tom said. "Sarah Calloway's been dead for 10 years. "I know," Owen said quietly. "Then who the hell is this kid?" Owen didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was spinning, pulling him back to a night he'd spent a decade trying to forget. The night Sarah had looked at him with tears in her eyes and told him she was leaving. The night he'd let her go without a fight. He'd never seen her again. But now, standing in the saloon with this child staring up at him, he felt the weight of every choice he'd ever made, pressing down on his chest like a stone. Lily took a step closer. "She said you'd know what to do," she said softly. "She said you'd help me." Owen turned back to her, his heart pounding. "Help you with what?" Lily's lip trembled. "The bad men," she whispered. "They're coming." Tom's hand went to the rifle behind the bar. "What bad men?" "The ones who hurt Mama," Lily said, her voice breaking. "They're coming back. She said they'd find me if I stayed. She said I had to find you." Owen knelt down again, his hands on his knees. "Lily, listen to me. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Who hurt your mama?" Lily shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't know their names, but Mama does. She told me to run. She told me to come here. She said the piano would bring you back." Owen's mind was racing. He looked at Tom, who was staring at the girl with a mixture of pity and suspicion. "She's lying," Tom said flatly. "Or she's sick in the head. Either way, she's not staying here." "Tom." "No." Tom pointed at the door. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but I'm not playing. Sarah's been dead for 10 years, Owen. You know that. We both know that." "Then explain the piano," Owen said, his voice hard. Tom faltered. He looked at the instrument in the corner, then back at Lily. "I can't," he admitted. "But that doesn't mean she's telling the truth." Owen stood, his jaw set. "I'm not turning her out." "Then where's she gonna go? You planning to take her with you?" "If I have to." Tom stared at him, disbelief written across his face. "You're serious? She's a child, Tom, and she's scared. I'm not putting her on the street." Tom shook his head slowly. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Owen said, "but it won't be the first time." He turned back to Lily, who was watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. He crouched down again and put a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. You understand?" Lily nodded, a small, fragile thing. Owen stood and looked at Tom. "Give her something to eat. I'll be back." "Where are you going?" "To find out who she's running from." Tom opened his mouth to argue, but Owen was already heading for the door. He pushed through the bat wings and stepped out into the street, the cool night air biting at his skin. Behind him, the piano began to play again. The same melody, soft, haunting. Owen stopped in the doorway, his hand on the frame. He didn't turn around. "I hear you, Sarah," he whispered. The music didn't stop, but somewhere in the notes, buried beneath the sorrow, he thought he heard something else. A warning. Owen walked the perimeter of town in the dark, his boots crunching on the dirt road, his hand resting on the grip of his revolver. Red Bluff was quiet this time of night. Most folks were inside, shutters drawn, lamps burning low. the kind of quiet that felt heavy, like the air before a storm. He stopped at the edge of town, where the road disappeared into the scrub and the hills rose up like sleeping giants. He stood there for a long time, listening. Nothing. But that didn't mean no one was out there. Owen had spent enough years tracking men to know when he was being watched. It was a feeling in the back of his neck, a tightness in his chest. And right now, every instinct he had was screaming at him to turn around. He didn't. Instead, he walked back toward the saloon, keeping to the shadows, his eyes scanning the rooftops and alleyways. Red Bluff wasn't a big town, maybe 200 people on a good day, but it had enough dark corners to hide a dozen men if they knew where to look. When he pushed back through the doors of the Broken Spoke, Lily was sitting at the bar with a plate of bread and butter in front of her. Tom was standing behind the counter, his arms crossed, his face grim. "She say anything else?" Owen asked. Tom shook his head. "Just keep staring at that damn piano." Owen followed the girl's gaze. The piano was silent now, but the air around it felt different, charged, like something was waiting. He pulled a chair over and sat down across from Lily. "Lily," he said gently, "I need you to tell me more about the men who are coming. What do they look like? How many are there?" Lily didn't look at him. She broke off a piece of bread and held it in her hand, not eating. "3," she said quietly. "Maybe 4. What do they want?" "Mama's things." Owen frowned. "What things?" Lily finally looked up at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "The box," she said, "the one she hid before she died." Owen's stomach dropped. "What box?" "I don't know, but they think I know where it is." Tom leaned forward. "If you don't know where it is, why the hell are they chasing you?" Lily's voice was small. "Because I'm the only one left." Owen's chest tightened. He looked at Tom, who was staring at the girl with something close to understanding. "They think she's leverage," Owen said quietly. Tom nodded. "Or they think she's lying. Either way, they're coming." As if in answer, the sound of hoofbeats echoed from the street outside. Owen was on his feet in an instant, his hand going to his gun. Tom grabbed the rifle from behind the bar. Lily slid off her stool and backed toward the corner, her eyes wide with terror. The hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the doors swung open. 3 men stepped inside. They were hard-looking, the kind of men whose faces had been shaped by violence and bad choices. The one in front was tall and lean, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. His coat was dusty, his hat pulled low. He carried a revolver on each hip, and the way he moved said he knew how to use them. The 2 behind him were younger, but no less dangerous. One had a rifle slung over his shoulder. The other had a knife strapped to his belt, the handle worn smooth from use. The tall man looked around the saloon, his gaze sweeping over Owen, Tom, and finally Lily. His mouth curled into a smile. "Well," he said slowly, "looks like we found her." Owen stepped between the man and Lily, his hand hovering near his gun. "You've got no business here." The tall man's smile widened. "I've got business with the girl. She's not going anywhere with you. That's not your decision to make, friend." Owen's voice was cold. "I'm not your friend." The man's smile faded. He took a step forward, his hand resting on the grip of his revolver. "You know who I am?" "Don't care." "Name's Caleb Rourke. Maybe you've heard of me." Owen had. Rourke was a bounty hunter, the kind who didn't care whether his marks came in alive or dead. He'd been run out of 3 territories for killing men who didn't deserve it, and he'd spent the last 5 years working for whoever paid him the most. "I've heard of you," Owen said. "None of it good." Rourke's jaw tightened. "The girl's got something that belongs to my employer. We're here to collect. She's 7 years old. She doesn't have anything. Then she knows where it is." "She doesn't." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "You calling me a liar?" Owen didn't flinch. "I'm telling you to leave." For a long moment, no one moved. The air in the saloon was thick, electric. Behind the bar, Tom's finger was on the trigger of his rifle. Lily was pressed against the wall, her face pale. Then Rourke smiled again, slow and dangerous. "I'll give you one chance," he said quietly. "Hand over the girl, and we walk out of here. No blood, no trouble. And if I don't?" Rourke's smile vanished. "Then we take her anyway." Owen's hand moved to his gun. "Try it," he said. Rourke's eyes flicked to the men behind him. Then, slowly, he took a step back. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Won't be my first." Rourke's gaze lingered on Owen for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked toward the door. His men followed. At the threshold, he stopped. "We'll be back," he said without turning around. "And next time, we won't ask nicely." The doors swung shut behind him. Owen didn't move until the sound of hoofbeats faded into the night. Then he exhaled slowly and turned to Lily. "You're not leaving my sight," he said. Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. From the corner, the piano began to play again. They didn't sleep that night. Owen sat by the window with his rifle across his lap, watching the street for any sign of movement. Tom kept the lamps low and the doors barred. Lily curled up in a chair near the piano, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes never leaving the keys. The music came and went in waves, soft, mournful, impossible. Sometimes it lasted only a few bars. Other times it played for minutes, the melody weaving through the silence like a thread, holding the night together. Owen didn't try to explain it anymore. He just listened. Around midnight, Lily finally spoke. "She's not angry," she said quietly. Owen looked at her. "What?" "Mama." Lily's voice was small, fragile. "People think she's angry, but she's not. She's just sad." Owen set the rifle down and crossed the room. He pulled a chair over and sat beside her, his elbows resting on his knees. "How do you know that?" Lily looked at the piano. "Because I can feel it," she said. "Every time the music plays, it's like she's trying to tell me something, but I don't know what." Owen's throat tightened. He thought about Sarah, the way she used to sit at that piano with her hands moving like water, the way her face would go soft when she played. He thought about the night she left, the way she'd looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "I can't stay here, Owen. Not anymore." He'd never asked why. "She loved you," Lily said suddenly. Owen's head snapped up. "What?" "Mama, she loved you. She told me." Owen's chest felt like it was caving in. "Lily, your mama and I, we didn't—" "She said you were the only good man she ever knew," Lily interrupted. Her voice was steady now, quiet but sure. "She said you tried to save her, but she wouldn't let you." Owen closed his eyes. "I should have tried harder." "She said you'd say that." Owen let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his chest for 10 years. He opened his eyes and looked at Lily. "Why didn't she tell me about you?" Lily's face crumpled. "Because she was scared," she whispered. "She didn't want the bad men to find me. She thought if she stayed away, I'd be safe. But they found you anyway." Lily nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She tried to hide me, but they knew. They always knew." Owen reached out and put a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I promise." Lily looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "Do you mean it?" "I do." For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Lily leaned forward and wrapped her arms around Owen's neck. He froze, startled, then slowly put his arms around her and held her close. She smelled like dust and fear and something sweet, like wildflowers. She was so small, so fragile. And in that moment, Owen felt the weight of every mistake he'd ever made settle onto his shoulders. But he also felt something else, a choice. Behind them, Tom cleared his throat. Owen looked up and saw the older man standing by the bar, his face softer than it had been all night. "I'll take the first watch," Tom said quietly. "You get some rest." Owen nodded. He helped Lily to her feet and led her to the back room, where there was a cot and a thin blanket. She lay down without a word, her eyes already closing. Owen pulled the blanket up over her and sat on the floor beside the cot. He leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. The piano played softly in the other room, and for the first time in 10 years, Owen didn't feel alone. When he woke, it was still dark. Lily was asleep, her breathing slow and steady. Owen stood quietly and walked back into the saloon. Tom was at the bar, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. He slid one across to Owen without a word. Owen drank it in one swallow. "You gonna tell me what you're planning?" Tom asked. Owen set the glass down. "I'm getting her out of here." "Where?" "Somewhere they can't find her." Tom nodded slowly. "And Rourke?" Owen's jaw tightened. "He'll come back. You know he will." "Then what?" Owen looked at the piano. The keys were still, but he could feel it, the weight of Sarah's presence, the pull of something unfinished. "I'll deal with him," Owen said quietly. Tom studied him for a long moment. Then he poured another glass and pushed it toward Owen. "You always were a stubborn bastard." Owen almost smiled. "So I've been told." They drank in silence. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. The night stretched on, long and uncertain. But inside the saloon, for just a moment, there was peace. Dawn came slow and pale, the kind of light that felt more like a warning than a promise. Owen stood outside the saloon, his coat pulled tight, his rifle in his hands. The street was empty, but he could feel them out there, waiting. Inside, Lily was awake. Tom had given her a cup of milk and a piece of bread, and she sat at the bar, eating quietly, her eyes flicking toward the door every few seconds. Owen stepped back inside and crouched down in front of her. "Lily," he said gently, "I need you to stay with Tom. No matter what happens, you stay inside. You understand?" Lily's lip trembled. "They're coming back, aren't they?" "Yes. And you're going to fight them?" Owen nodded. "I am." Lily's face crumpled. "What if you don't come back?" Owen reached out and cupped her face in his hands. "I will," he said quietly. "I promise." Lily searched his eyes, then nodded slowly. Owen stood and turned to Tom. "Keep her safe." Tom nodded, his face grim. "You be careful." Owen stepped out into the street just as the sun crested the horizon. The light was harsh, unforgiving, and riding toward him, silhouetted against the sky, were 3 riders, Caleb Rourke and his men. They stopped 20 feet away. Rourke dismounted slowly, his hand resting on his gun. The other 2 stayed in their saddles, rifles drawn. "Didn't think you'd still be here," Rourke said. Owen's voice was steady. "I told you she's not going anywhere." Rourke's jaw tightened. "I gave you a chance to walk away." "I don't walk away." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "Then you're a fool." "Maybe." For a moment, neither man moved. The street was silent, the air thick with tension. Then Rourke drew. Owen was faster. The shot echoed through the street like thunder. Rourke staggered back, his hand going to his chest. Blood bloomed across his shirt, dark and spreading. He looked down at it, then up at Owen, surprise written across his face. He fell to his knees, then forward into the dust. The 2 men on horseback raised their rifles. Owen dropped to the ground as shots rang out, rolling behind a water trough. He came up firing, and one of the men jerked backward, falling from his saddle. The 3rd man turned his horse and kicked it hard, galloping away down the street. Owen didn't follow. He stood slowly, his rifle still raised, watching until the rider disappeared over the hill. Then he lowered the gun and walked to where Rourke lay. The man was still breathing, but barely. His eyes were open, staring up at the sky. "The box," Rourke whispered. "What's in it?" Owen looked down at him. "I don't know." Rourke's mouth twitched, something close to a smile. "Neither do I." His eyes went still. Owen stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked back to the saloon. Inside, Lily was standing by the piano. She wasn't crying anymore. She was just staring at the keys, her face calm. Owen crossed the room and knelt beside her. "It's over," he said quietly. Lily looked up at him. "Is it?" Owen nodded. "They won't come back." Lily's gaze drifted back to the piano. "Mama knew," she whispered. "She knew you'd save me." Owen's throat tightened. "Lily, I don't know if your mama's really here, but if she is, Lily said firmly. "And she wants me to show you something." She reached into her dress and pulled out a small brass key. Owen stared at it, confused. "Where did you get that?" "Mama gave it to me," Lily said. "The night she died. She said when the time came, I'd know what to do with it." Owen took the key. It was old, tarnished, but solid. "What does it open?" Lily pointed at the piano. Owen frowned. He walked over to the instrument and ran his hand along the side. There, beneath the edge of the lid, he found a small brass lock. He slid the key in. It turned with a soft click. Owen lifted the lid. Beneath the strings, hidden in a narrow compartment, was a wooden box. He pulled it out carefully and set it on the bar. Tom and Lily crowded around as he opened it. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age, and beneath it, a deed. Owen unfolded the letter with trembling hands. The handwriting was Sarah's delicate, careful. "Owen, if you're reading this, then Lily found you. I knew she would. I knew you'd keep her safe. The deed is for the saloon. I bought it years ago, before I left. I wanted to give it to you then, but I was too afraid. Afraid you'd refuse. Afraid you'd think I was trying to trap you. But the truth is, I loved you. I always did. And I wanted you to have something to hold on to. Something real. The men who are after Lily, they work for the man I ran from. He wanted this deed. He wanted the land. But it's not his. It's yours. Take care of her, Owen. She's all I have left. Sarah." Owen's hands were shaking. He set the letter down and looked at the deed. It was real, legal, signed, and notarized. The broken spoke was his. Tom let out a long breath. Well, I'll be damned. Owen looked at Lily. She was smiling, just a little. She knew you'd come back, Lily said softly. Owen's eyes burned. He nodded, unable to speak. From the corner, the piano played one last time. Soft, gentle, and then it stopped. 5 years later, the broken spoke had a new sign out front. The floors had been fixed, the roof patched. The bar smelled like fresh wood and lemon polish. And in the corner, the piano gleamed under a shaft of afternoon light. Lily sat at the keys, her hands moving with the same grace her mother's once had. She was 12 now, taller, stronger, but her eyes still held that same quiet knowing. Owen stood by the door, his hat in his hands, watching her play. When the song ended, she looked up at him and smiled. "Mama would have liked this," she said. Owen nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She would have." Lily stood and crossed the room. She took his hand, and together they walked out into the golden light of evening. Behind them, the piano sat silent. But if you listened close enough, on quiet nights when the wind was just right, you could still hear it, playing Mama's song,